I define myself by who I am, not what I do. And I think that one of the big challenges that a lot of people face is they intertwine their identity with their work.
Yeah.
Right? I am a lawyer, I am a fitness coach or whatever, somebody wants to do. And then if you lose that job by your choice or not your own choice, or if you have great success and you get older and you decide to leave and retire or do something else, I see a lot of people have an identity crisis because they no longer do the thing that they did.
Yeah.
And so I don't mind what I do because I get to be an optimist in everything that I do. And the way I live my life is I live completely focused with a vision that is extremely far away. Completely, I'll never get there. I imagine a world in which the vast majority of people wake up every single morning inspired, feel safe wherever they are, and end the day fulfilled by the work that they do. And for me, the objective is to figure out all the ways that I can to start moving closer and closer towards that world. And so for the better part of the last, decade or more, I bet on leaders. I believe that leaders, the best bet that we have to get to that world that I imagine, that if we can find and celebrate and support the kinds of leaders who can build great organizations where people feel like they belong, that feel like they're contributing something bigger than themselves, then we are more likely to get to that world, right? Now, what's my role in that? Again, completely agnostic. I never, ever imagined that I would be an author. I was never one of those people who thought I had a book in them, And after every book I've written, I've said, okay, that's probably my last one. And I said that after the first one,
Wow.
But here I am, an author, because the opportunity showed up that I thought, oh, this is a good way to move towards that vision, right? Then people would invite me to speak about my ideas. And I thought, okay, never, ever wanted to be a public speaker. Didn't even know that was a career. It's
That's
true.
Interesting, right?
I actually am more of a behind the scenes person. I've never desired to be in the front of a proscenium. But when the opportunities presented themselves, I thought, well, this is a very good way for me to spread this message and to spread this vision. And so when you ask me, what do? I do anything that I need to do to advance towards that vision. These days, I'll write books and I'll speak about it. But who knows what the next 5 years will look like? It could be completely, completely different.
Well, okay, so in that one answer, I have now 50
Isn't that annoying
questions.
that you say, what do you do? And it takes me 30 minutes to answer.
Yeah, exactly. I actually have a friend who did a TED Talk on this, like when someone asks you that question of what do you do, to how to do an elevator pitch.
Well, I can tell you what I say on an airplane. If somebody says, what do you do?
Tell me what you say on an airplane.
I say I teach leaders and organizations how to inspire people.
All right, that's good.
And if they believe what I believe, they say, inspiration, that's cool. How do you do that? And we can talk about my work for as long as they can stand it. And if they don't believe what I believe, they say, what kind of companies? What kind of organizations? So it's a great filter.
Yeah.
Immediately I know if they're on the same wavelength as me or not.
Do people recognize you on airplanes?
These days, yeah.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. Well, okay, first of all, I guess to go back even further than I was going to, did you even... When your TED Talk is probably the number 2 or 3 most viewed of all time, right? Like 80 million, 100 million by now. Something insane.
I don't know if it's that high, but yeah, it's done
high.
Well. Yeah,
it's pretty. And then of course I'm sure it's actually even higher because it's been shared and shared and shared, right? But were you even shocked? How did that even because that takes you, I did a TED Talk recently, a couple years ago, and that was considered a viral TED Talk with 5 million or 6 million. And that put my life on a different trajectory. Mm-hmm. I can't even imagine with your type of success in that TED Talk, were you completely floored at the response that it had?
Yes and no is the simple answer.
Okay.
Is
there ever a simple answer with you?
Sometimes.
Okay.
The answer is yes and no. I had been giving versions of that talk for 3 years before I actually did the TEDx.
Okay.
I'd never done it that short.
Right.
there were hour-long versions. And so I knew that the message had resonance. And I'd been asked so many of the difficult questions that I'd worked out a lot of the kinks in the thinking. So I knew that the message had resonance. I knew that people liked it. So I knew that.
Okay.
But I never expected this rinky-dink TEDx talk that I did in a hangar in Puget Sound with like 50 or 100 people in the room, where the camera it's very low quality.
Right.
My microphone breaks in the middle of me talking,
Me too.
like literally they like trading out mics,
I remember seeing that. That was hilarious.
Yeah. And it's living proof that things can go wrong and it'll be fine.
Yeah. Totally fine.
So I didn't know that the TEDx talk would do what it did.
Okay.
And back then it was unheard of to put a TEDx on the main TED website. So they only put them on YouTube.
Right.
And there was a separate page for TEDx talks just on YouTube,
right.
And then the main TED talks would just be on the TED.com. And it very quickly became the most watched TEDx of all. And then they put it on TED.com. And I only found out that they were going to do that a week before they did it. So, and then it continued to grow, extremely fast. So yeah, that was all a shock to me. That was all a surprise to me. I knew the message had resonance. I never knew that it was going to do that. That was a surprise. Yeah.
So before you did that, I mean, you said you were doing these talks anyway. So you were already doing public speaking at some level, right?
Yeah.
So just walk me through, because I'm actually very curious about you before you. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm really kind of curious about. So you were like disgruntled with your career a little bit, right?
I wouldn't say disgruntled.
Didn't love it.
I'd fallen out of love. Yeah.
Okay.
I had no passion for my career.
Okay.
And this was a chosen career. Like, I started my own business in a category, in a profession that I thought I wanted to spend the rest of my life in.
Consulting.
Marketing.
Oh, okay. I thought it was
and to wake up one morning with a superficially good life. I owned my own business. We had amazing clients. We did really good work. Our clients liked us and didn't want to do it anymore.
Right.
It's kind of distressing because, as I said when we started, so many of us intertwine our identities with our work. And if I don't like my work, then who am I?
Right.
And so I went through that, which was incredibly unfun. And it was the discovery of this little idea that I called the golden circle, where we all know what we do. Some of us know how we do it, but very few of us know why we do what we do. And I realized I didn't know why I was doing what I was doing. And it was that crisis that was designed to do nothing more than help me find my own passion, to get back my mojo, that put me in a path that was unexpected. My entire career is an accident.
Amazing.
I am living proof that you don't have to have a plan.
Right. Exactly. And it worked out for you, right?
You have to have a vision. You have to have a vector. You have to have a direction, but you definitely don't need to know the individual steps.
So you kind of answered earlier. Well, before I even go into that, you said something in your first answer to me, which I thought was interesting, that you're not defining yourself by what you do, but the problem I find in today's time anyway, everything's kind of very much dovetails, like who you are, what you do. What you do is really who you are. So you become friends with the people you work with or who are aligned with what you do. There's very little separation in that. So I'm interested in how how are you able to like compartmentalize that a little bit? You know what I mean? Because I find it very difficult. Like what I do, it's not, two things happen. I think that other people compartmentalize you as well. So if I was a health and fitness person, but I'm also this thing and that thing and that thing, the other, like outside from that, people pigeonhole you. So it's very hard to break away. You're saying that like you're not really defined by what you do, but what you want or how like you're being an optimist. What kind of advice or would you suggest for other people out there? Because I think that there's a lot of confusion and people do get pigeonholed and or they don't know the difference. Like they're confused because like you said, they are what they do. And so there's no distinction.
Yeah, I still get pigeonholed. people know me as the thing that is familiar, and so I remember in the early days, when the only thing I could talk about was starting with why.
Yeah.
When I started to have more ideas and different ideas, and I would pitch to these prospective engagements, I'd like to talk about something new. They'd all say no because they wanted me to do the thing that they knew was good. They wouldn't let me try something new. And so I just arbitrarily picked one and basically didn't do as I was told and decided to do something new on the stage. And I think there's I'm not saying there's a one size fits all here. There's a risk tolerance, but I like testing things in real life. Many of my ideas are from real life scenarios where it's not like practice. Okay, it's ready for the real world now. There have been more than one occasion where I've walked out on stage and go, okay, they brought me in to talk about this, but I'm having some new ideas. Are you guys okay if I try talking about this? It might completely fail. Just wanted to get some, and like people, especially you pick your audiences, you pick a room full of entrepreneurs,
right?
They're fine with it,
Right.
If I pick a room full of engineers, maybe not,
right.
But maybe not, maybe engineers are fine with that too. And then I would try new things. And I think what makes it work is very often when we do these things, we show up with a selfish disposition, right? I hope they like me. I hope they like my work. I hope they buy my book. I hope they, go to my website. I hope they follow me on social media.
Right.
And we act that way. We put a picture behind us on the PowerPoint, and it has all of our social media handles on it, and it has a phone number and a website and an email address.
Right.
And we say at the end, somebody asks a question, it's like, question whatever, and we reply, well, you'll have to read my book, or well, that's from my book, and it's like we put ourselves, and that's, people can tell. And in those cases, we're not rooting for you. In fact, we're going to try and trip you up.
Right.
Because we can't help ourselves. It's entertaining.
Yes.
You put yourself at the front, we'll have fun with that. And so I've learned early to show up with a giver's mentality, where I don't care if they like me. I don't care if they buy a book. I don't care if they follow me on social media or not. All I know is I have something that I think is really valuable, and I'm going to give it to you. I want to give it to you. And I believe, and I'm giving it to you with all of my gusto and all of my energy. And so like, I remember, people would apologize because they said there's going to be this size event and like only half the number of people showed up, and they're apologizing. And I know a lot of speakers who'd get angry. You promised me this size audience. And I was like, well, I just feel sorry for the people who didn't show up, because the people who did show up are going to get all of me.
Right.
I hold back nothing. And I think when you show up with a giver's heart, and I literally will say that before I go out on a stage, I will literally say under my breath before I step on the stage, you're here to give. I will remind myself that what I'm about to do is an act of generosity. I think I have something pretty and I want to share it. And people can tell.
Yeah. Authenticity.
People can tell. And so you have a wide berth when you show up with a giver's heart. You can make mistakes and you can stumble over your words, and you can talk a little bit too much like I am right now. And people are just fine with it.
Yeah.
So I think, we're highly attuned social animals. And if you show up to give, you believe it or not, you can experiment a lot.
How can someone change that though, right? Like if you're innately someone who doesn't think like that, right? Like I'm here to give, because you're right. Like I think human nature, I want to sell my book, go check out my handle, do this, do that, do that. How do you shift like your mindset? Can you train your brain to think differently like that? So it is authentic, because you, by just saying it, doesn't make it so.
No, correct.
Right?
Of course you can train yourself. Like, I wish I could be healthy, but there's so many things, and I'm just not a healthy person. And, can I ever be healthy? Of course. You just practice it. Like you just start. Yes, of course. And it may not work the first 5 or 10 times. You go to the gym a bunch of times in a row, you will see no results.
Right.
Like these things sometimes take time. It's the same. The best I can sum it up when I really started to learn this lesson was many years ago, I had a meeting at the Pentagon of all places with a big fancy general. And I was waiting in the foyer, just waiting for him. And have you ever had it where you go to a meeting or
Pentagon? No.
Well, I mean, you've had meetings, and somebody comes to get you, to take you to the conference room or the office or whatever, and you have hallway talk because walking quietly down a hallway is too uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so you have hallway talk, which is nonsense. It's things like, how's, hot day out today? Or did you have an easy trip?
Totally.
And
yes,
it's just nonsense. And as soon as you walk into the room, that ceases, right? Well, that's what happened to me. The general came to get me and we were walking back to his office and the hallway talk ensued. And he said, Simon, I had everyone in my office read your book. And I said, my publisher thanks you. And he said, tell them not to bother. I had them read my copy.
That's what he said to you?
That's what he said to me. So I learned total book sales, 1. Total impact, huge.
Yeah.
Versus I go to an event and they give away 500 free copies of my book, but they use them as, coasters and doorstops. Total book sales, 500, total impact, 0. And so I had to learn that it's not always easy to measure the impact that we have in the short term. Now, I know over the long term, book sales are a reflection of the value of my ideas and whether people want them. Otherwise, it would just stop selling. Like I know over the time, but in the short term, literally, it tells me nothing. And I think too many of us confuse that the short-term impacts that we're having are producing long-term value, or conversely, having no short-term impact means we're having no value. Mm-hmm. And so I treat it like exercise, which is I know that the process matters. So for example, you can't go to the gym for 9 hours and get into shape. It literally doesn't work, right? No matter how much effort you put in. But if you work out every single day for 20 minutes, guaranteed 100%, you will get into shape.
Right.
When will you get into shape? No clue.
Right.
No one knows. Over time. And everyone's different. Some people a little quicker, some people a little slower. And yet we are 100% sure, 100%. It'll 100% work. I just don't know when. And we're also obsessed with predicting when. It has to be this quarter. It has to be the end of the year. It has to be when we pay taxes. It has, whatever it is. And I got very comfortable saying, I know that if I stick to the process, I work out every day for 20 minutes. I know 100% it's going to work. And I have to get comfortable that I have no control over when. Mm-hmm.